Hi, Diana. Welcome to Furniture Success Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, please?
Sure. So, my company is the Pink Pinecone. And a little about me, I started it, 8 years ago now. And it was right after I had my daughter, who's 8. That's how I did the math real quick there. Um, and it was basically birthed out of it sort of happened organically is the best way to describe it. I have a background in art education, so I was an art teacher, and I also integrated special ed in there, and I also was working at Wayfair at the time, so I was working with interior designers and things like that. And I've always kind of had a knack for physical things, like putting things together, building things. That kind of work always appealed to me, and always came rather easily. And again, just was something that I found to be fun anyway. So truly, I've been sort of mucking around with stuff since a very young age. And then when I had my daughter, it was that moment of like, okay, do I go back into an office space and do the commute and the whole thing that goes with that and get the daycare and, sort of miss out on the childhood a little bit? Or can I kind of take this as a pause? And so we had just purchased a house that's it's a real fixer upper. And
Hmm.
at the time, there was a lot to do. So, she would take a nap and I would find myself just sort of rehabbing the house. And that meant, restoring furniture, rehabbing like full rooms. So, like, redoing plumbing. And in our bathroom, made a dresser into a vanity that we could put like a sink in and ran the plumbing through and had to like reroute some things and
Hmm.
sort of design around that. And so that was kind of what was happening for me at the time anyway. Uh, and then I had some friends reach out, be like, "Oh, I saw what you did in your house. Can you help me do XYZ here?" Right? So some interior design stuff, some furniture became part of that. And one thing just kind of led to the next, and I just kind of started doing it. So I just was doing it for friends and neighbors and people. Oh, I have this oh my gosh, I got my grandmother's old hutch. Would you help me insert something here with it? And then I would take a in and just start doing it. And I was really loving it, and I love the fact that I could both be present for my daughter when she, would wake up from a nap, and I could be doing that, and I could scale this up or down depending on how my life was sort of evolving because this was sort of a new phase for me.
Hmm.
And so I could work in the evenings, I could work in the morning, I could, like I said, work during her nap time. And that's really how it started. So it just, again, kind of happened. I was like, I might as well stick a name on this and call it a business and then, see where it goes. And then as soon as I did, it just took off because there was a need and demand for it. I live north of Boston, and yeah, enough people wanted that service, and it really did start almost like from a guerrilla marketing as well. Putting up little ads in like the library. I had built up a bunch of furniture that I had rehabbed and sort of either acquired or found or just it was sadly inherited. Um, and I ended up one day just kind of putting it all at the end of the driveway and having an open artist studio day. People came and it was like, uh, I don't know, sort of like a upper echelon yard sale, but not really because it was like very dated. And a lot of people showed up and took business cards. And then, like I said, and then it just kind of snowballed. It wasn't something that really, had the most amount of structure to it, but I definitely did think about the business aspect of it before I really just let it, kind of go.
Hmm.
That's like
And
grab.
wow. And like, how do you select your products?
How do I sell them?
Yeah. No, no,
Oh,
select them. Like, when you look at something, definitely you see something different than others, right? And I think that makes you different than other businesses. So what's unique for you and how do you select your products?
yeah. I think that the unique piece is that I have that background in art. So my natural inclination has always been to look at something and sort of see the beauty that is living within it. That really comes inherently, and I have a pretty large aptitude for visualization, and so I can. This is when my husband and I were looking at houses, there were so many that were, like, really sad. I'm like, "Oh, but can't you see if we just did this, 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 and this, it would be," and my husband's like, "I can't see that at all." I'm not, and so I think that just knack is sort of inherent. Uh, but as far as, finding pieces or, like, advice, that I would give, I suppose, is really look for good bones. So, do some research, I think, is really important, and having a backdrop in general furniture education is going to be helpful. So, you know what dovetail joints look like, and you know how to spot them, and those are going to be pieces that are built with more integrity, so that if you do restore them, they actually have the capacity to continue living on, as opposed to, no offense, IKEA, but like restoring an IKEA piece is, it's not built to last in that same way to begin with. So that wouldn't be as recommended, I suppose, for restoration. So I really look for the build quality. I look for the build materials. If I know that I want to stain something, I'm going to find more stainable wood, right? So something like oak is going to be a great candidate for that. Or if I know that I want to make something whitewashed or bleached, I'm not going to pick cherry and mahogany because it's going to turn out pink. So things like that you sort of acquire over time from just doing it. But I think also if you have a general backdrop and understanding of what you're looking for, it starts to get easier to note and to like see it. Uh, I just love old stuff though. I just love that old vintage. I mean, and you can get really in the weeds of it too. Like, oh, I can tell when this was made just by the nail, like the type of nail, how the nail was created, uh, things like that. I just find really
Mhm, mhm.
kind of exciting. So I gravitate more towards like things kind of 1970s and
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you love what you do, and that's great. And what are some challenges you faced while growing a boutique business in today's competitive market?
it I think the biggest thing is to stay nimble because everything kept changing. So I started before COVID, and then during COVID, it was like, okay, let's change everything up. And then after COVID, the business model changed again. So I think kind of knowing what the market looks like and being able to adapt to it is really important. So for example, when I first began, I sort of had like a 50-50 split. So half the business was stuff that I would find or acquire, that I would rehab and then resell. That's one side of the business. And then the other side was like custom work. So someone would bring me their grandmother's dining room set and what have you, or their old something or other's dresser, and they wanted it to be painted for their child's room or restored or what have you. And so that was the other half of the business. And that model worked out really well because then I could always kind of have my hand in something. So I had, on one side of the house, I was working on the custom aspect of it. And then when I had extra time, I could go back and do the other stuff because there wasn't as much pressure or time constraints. People want things by a certain time. No one knows that I'm working on this, so I can take as long as I want. Uh, and then that model really shifted during COVID because the demand just became so high. So I completely sold out of this side of the house, and I didn't really have enough time to do the custom stuff because I was just constantly feeding this machine of as soon as I would refinish something, it was gone because you couldn't get it in the stores and the shipping was extravagantly priced. And so I was offering really good prices on really well-made furniture that could be customized. So what I would do is I would maybe, if I found a bookshelf, for example, that I knew I wanted to rehab, I would post it to my social media just sort of as is and be like, would anyone like to claim this? And then sort of let the bidding war begins. And then kind of go from there. And then whoever picked it would be like, yep, I would love that for, like I said, my daughter's room. Can you whatever? And then they would pick it and claim it to be customized. And so I knew that I was going to have a buyer at the end of that. I didn't have to worry about like, oh, if I do all this work, how is it going to sell? And so that really helped. And then once COVID ended and that sort of time passed, I've just been completely slammed with custom work, and to the point where I don't even think I have. Gosh, I think I have one thing right now that's finished in my store. And I have a few other things that I've acquired that I'm like, I gotta get to those, but I just haven't had the time because I'm just constantly doing all these custom pieces. So I think it's very fluid. I think that it's staying in the market and kind of knowing where people are wanting to take things is really important.
Mhm.
Um, Sorry, I can't tell if you froze.
Yeah, and that's how you keep your product offerings fresh and relevant, right?
Oh, sorry, it looks like you froze there. Oh, you're back.
Okay. Yeah,
I say
I said like that's how you keep your product offerings fresh and relevant
yeah.
in the fast changing world of home decor, right?
Yeah, if you have a relative understanding of what the demand is, then you know what you're looking for too. So at, right now I also have sort of a running list of people who reach out saying, I'm looking for XYZ. And I usually make sure to ask for dimensions. Can you send me an inspiration picture? How do you ultimately want it to look? Again, that goes into if I want it to be whitewashed, well, then I'm not going to acquire a mahogany piece because that ain't gonna jive. So I have a running list of people's names, numbers, emails, what they're looking for, any specificity that they need. It needs to meet these dimensions or have it look this way. And then if I go to Facebook Marketplace or I'm, wherever, an antique store, I know that I'm looking for these things. So I can always kind of call back into that little note that I have on my phone. Just,
Mhm.
if you see this, this would be great. And then you start to get um, sort of a feel for what the majority of people are looking for, I think, because things kind of come up a lot. So dressers, I've never met a dresser that didn't sell. Uh, Bigger buffets, those usually do, but they kind of have a little bit more wait time. So you might have to sit on that for a little bit longer just because it's a bigger piece. And so there's a much more specific market share of people who can actually fit it into their house or looking for one. And usually at that, they want it to be a certain way. So I'm looking for a buffet, but it has to be this color ivory and this kind of hardware and this kind of style. Um, Bookshelves are, I mean, you get a bookshelf, it's gonna be gone tomorrow. So things like that, things that I know are more of like a safe bet or a sure thing, those I have very little trouble just being like, "Yep, I'll take that. Thank you. That's fine. I'll take this too," you know? Uh, Other things that come up or some people are like, "Oh, I'm getting rid of my dining room set. Would you like it?" No, no, thank you. See, there's no one they don't have the buyers aren't there for that, you know?
Yeah, and how important is customer experience for your brand, and how do you make it special for your
Literally
customers?
everything. I mean, the whole brand is customer experience because it's just me. And so if I if the customer doesn't have a good interaction with me, that's the business. It isn't like, oh, and then I can refer you over to this other person or, whatever. That's the whole thing. And so since so much of it is also by word of mouth, I need to make sure that I'm honoring every part of the process. So the beginning part when they send out that first email or they put in an inquiry on Yelp or a phone call or a text or whatever, an Instagram message. Um, that's where it begins. But it's got to be done and handled in a very delicate way, I think, because you're talking about people's precious things for the most part. Like these are their family heirlooms and their grandmother's special XYZ. And this is their memory. Um, you know, I've had a lot of people bring me things that are just you can feel the specialness of it and the preciousness. And so it has to be done with such care and such delicacy. Um, the way that you interact with a client has to be um very considerate, like what really getting I truly believe that the most important part of the process is that exploration phone call. So I don't rely personally, I'm like old school. I want to pick up phone and actually talk to you. Uh, don't rely on just like what you told me in an email. That's great, but I want to make sure that I'm not interpreting your words in a different way than you were intending. So when you say, I want, my dresser refinished, what does that mean? Because some people are like, oh, I want it refinished. And to me, that means that you want the wood restored. To some people, that also means I wanted it painted. Right. And so it's important to get those qualifying questions out there. And I think that the best way to do it is to have an actual dialogue. So you're not going to get as much information as you would if you just picked up the phone and talked to somebody. And so I like just these 15-minute calls at least to really go into what is it that you're looking to have done and how do you want it to look when it's done. And Do you have any budget yet that we need to be respectful of? Because I'm not going to propose something that's not going to fit in that budget. They're all going to be sad. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're like, that's a great idea, and we can't do it. Like there's no point in that. So I really think that phone call is the most pivotal part of the whole experience. And then from there, if they decide to move forward and they bring over their piece and I'm working on it, one of the things that I've found I like, and I know that the customers like as well, is that I post on my Facebook and Instagram stories the progress so they can like kind of watch along. So they can see, this is what I did to your piece today. And so they get really excited, I think, kind of following that process. And then at the end, there's sort of this big reveal, right? And so getting that last picture of it all staged and, the good lighting and everything, I think it's really important to kind of bring them along in the process as opposed to at an arm's length and say, because I think that a lot of industries, especially now, do kind of lean a little bit less personal. And I think that the personal nature of what I'm doing is the most important part. And so they should be invited along to the decisions and to the process of it. And hey, here's what I'm thinking for this top coat, but how are you going to be using it? Are you the kind of person who's going to want to reapply wax? Because if no, let's not do a wax top coat. And I think that having that conversation is something that makes both the customer feel cared for, heard, and it makes sure that you're like, I don't want to go through all this work and do all this stuff for someone who's ultimately going to find it not to be useful in their house. Like, oh, I didn't talk to them long enough to find out that they have grandkids that come over and are going to use crayons on this thing.
Yeah.
I should have done a different top coat. That's my bad. And so then they're not going to be happy with the final product. I'm not going to be happy because I didn't do the work in the beginning. So I put a lot of stock in that first conversation, and I think that it's pivotal. It-
Mhm, mhm.
and then following up, of course, is equally important. Just letting clients know that look, if anything comes up down the road, I'm here. I'll come to your house. I'll touch things up. I'll whatever the case may be, because things happen, right? It's life.
Yeah.
But I think that the more informed the customer can be, um, the more they're going to feel, again, like part of the process. So talking to them about, okay, well, if you want to have it painted, here are the different paint options that I would recommend for the look that you're trying to achieve. These are the ones that just dress really beautifully. Let's talk about milk paint, mineral paint, chalk paint, whatever. Do you like it?
Mhm.
Shared look? Do you not like that look? Do you want to see the brush strokes? Is that not what you gravitate towards? Um, you really have to go into the weeds of it because you want to find that all out before start ordering materials and doing the work.
Wow, I see. And I know you are very active on social media. And my question is like, how do you use marketing both online and offline to reach your ideal customers?
Social media.
Yeah, like I saw your posts on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, or
Love
Pinterest.
social media. It like ugh. It brings up feelings of like it's look, I have to do it, right? Like it's a process. And I used to really like it in the beginning, especially Instagram in particular was just lovely because it wasn't all reels and sounds and clips and the whole, this whole thing. It truly was like a literal you'd scroll through pictures and see these beautiful inspirations and it was lovely, right? And it was very interactive and the algorithms weren't fighting you. It was just delicious. And now it's again, you got to kind of stay on your toes and you got to pivot. And I know that it's something that I should likely do more of,
Hmm.
but hear me out. So I I use social media quite a bit because again, it's a means to an end. It's basically the whole market. I mean, that's where people go to find things, whether it's something to procure or just something as inspiration or right. It's where people go to view the world and interact with the world. And so So I think it's really important that you have a social media presence for sure. Having a really nice website, so there's a landing page somewhere that people can go and get all the information that they need and see all of your work and sort of have this whole portfolio. Because I think that also helps provide inspiration of like, look, I want to paint my dresser blue, but I'm not so sure how it's going to look. And then I can, sort of direct them to go and take a look at things. And that always helps. Um, Social media in general is where I think it's the best place to interact with other furniture restoration folks. I think it's really nice to have that community there. Again, I found Instagram in particular to be very communal, very encouraging. So, like, it's people sort of, hey, did you try it? You can post a problem pretty straightforwardly. I don't know, something's happening. Can you take a look at this? And then no less than 19 people are going to collapse onto that, you know, thread and be like, oh my gosh, I had the same thing. And you know what it is? You're using a foam brush and you should try this or whatever, right? Whatever the thing is. So I think that that is something really lovely in a lot of ways and can be harnessed to be really great. And the recent shift of algorithm means that, something that used to get viewed by thousands of people, and I haven't changed what I'm posting, now is viewed by 20. And unless I really start to increase and churn out more posts and increase the volume of media that I'm putting out and increase the reels. And again, anything that has sound and movement to it is going to find its way to the top faster than something that's a picture. And I know all of that. Uh, and there is something rather deliberate about the choice to not do that. And I don't know if perhaps this can resonate, but did you ever hear there's like, I don't know if it's like, what do you call it, like a little fable about the banker and the fisherman, where there's a fisherman who's he fishes every day and he, catches enough fish for the day. And then he decides, I'm done. And he goes into shore and he brings his fish to market and he sells them. And then he goes down to, into the town and he has a drink with his wife and lunch and he goes out dancing and it's lovely, right? And the banker says to him, well, why don't you get a bunch of people to do the fishing for you? And then they can bring the fish in and you can fish longer and you can get more fish, right? And the fisherman is like, great. And then, and then what? The guy's like, well, then you'd have more money and have more time. He's like, to do what? And to go downtown and to have lunch with your wife and drink and to go dancing. And so it's that thing of like, well, if the end game remains the same, then is the pursuit necessary? And so for me, the end game is truly to do something that I really enjoy doing, that I still to accommodate my other family things. I want to be able to go to my daughter's soccer game. I want to have that flexibility. And so for me, I'm still able to do all of those things, even without having to go the extra, if it was something that I thought was going to yield new exciting results that I really did want or desire, then of course I would pursue it. But I think for me personally, and not every business, this isn't like a recommend, but for my business, flexibility is what I'm doing it,
Freedom.
yeah, the freedom. Yeah, that's the back end of it. And so, I'm achieving that. I'm there, right? And so, so broadening it, and building it out in that way wouldn't yield anything more desirable than I already have. So I'm gonna, go 9 more rounds trying to create a reel on Instagram or TikTok or whatever so that I can do what, right? The same we're already able to do. Yeah. But that being said, if you really want to grow your business, definitely get up. Yeah. And like live it.
I read a book like 4 years ago. It was yeah, this one, the Companion one, and like it was talking about your mindset.
So
Yeah, someone from New Zealand, and talking about it. And
this.
yeah, the the interesting thing is like there are tons of fish. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah, and you're kind of like one man army and company of one. Yeah, yeah, it's a different business model. So definitely, like, if you have freedom of time, money, and if you're happy, that's definitely a way of doing things. But we highly recommend, like, if you are gonna be stick to your business model, then you need to be serving to reach or premium services, like, because like your profit margin has to be a little bit higher than usual, and the quality has to be high, so you can make money and you can still be happy,
Yes.
stress free.
You have to have, I mean, yeah, ROI is key, right? Like there has to be that as well. It can't just be this, otherwise it's a hobby. And that's lovely too, for sure. You can have a hobby that also happens to make a few extra dollars. That's great. But I think that knowing what your business model and what your business goals are is the most important thing, because then you're constantly adjusting to make sure that you're going towards those goals. If there's sort of ambiguity about what that goal is, I think it's harder to know when you've achieved it, or am I in the process? Am I going directionally correct? It's hard to know if you don't have that thing on the horizon line. And I think that my business model will likely change, as the years go on and things just shift and shape. So it's sort of, again, it's sort of an amoeba structure right now, but for where I'm at right now, I think that I'm reaching enough of the market share the way that I'm kind of just my name is out there. Uh, I mean, right down to like I have little magnets that I put on my car when I'm driving around, and people will say, "Oh, I saw the Pink Pinecone parked at the Home Depot, and number, so I gave you a call because I have a piece of furniture that whatever." Um, and so I think that you can market in many ways, and it doesn't always have to be the most, obvious path. But I do think that if you're trying to get established, that's something that really important, is just to get as much out there as possible. So again, in the beginning, my presence on social media and um the time that I spent there was significantly higher than it is right now.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's pretty normal. How do you manage your time? Like, you are a mom, you take care of your operations, you take care of creative side, and like delivery, you are handling discovery calls with your leads, and how do you manage your time?
Now, the invoicing, the deliveries, the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I cry. No, the let's see. I gosh, I think I've always been very good um, at being efficient, and not just efficient for efficiency's sake, but rather really, really sitting down at the end of the day to plan my day for tomorrow. And figuring out, okay, look, if I were to put a top coat on this thing in the morning, then I'm not just gonna sit there and watch paint dry. Then I can run and do the groceries that I need to get for the week. And then when I get back, I'll put the second coat on, and then I'm gonna run out and do whatever. And so I think that there's a lot of planning that goes into this. So it isn't just like I wake up on Tuesday and I'm like, what is today? What will we do? I've already mapped all that out. Um, and so I think having a really good plan helps me remain the most efficient. And I also uh, I carve out time very specifically in my day where I set aside to do certain activities. So I know that it doesn't make sense for me to spend the time that my daughter's at school writing invoices. I can do that at night when she's in bed. So I'm going to spend my daytime doing daytime things and going to stores that are open during the day. Or if I need to, like I said, like go and get wood for a build, I'm gonna go and do that during the day, but I can do the other stuff at night. So I kind of create a list of all of my tasks and then sort of splice them out to where they can be best suited and served. Oh, you know what? If she's gonna be at karate class, like I can be putting together that Instagram post because I'm just sitting there for 45 minutes anyway. What else am I gonna do? So I find all of these little pockets and places that I sort of put all these tasks. So there's never a moment that I'm not doing something. It's just how do I do it the most efficient way? And that's really what it comes down to, is how to do your job in the most with the highest element of efficiency to it. And so that includes, when I take on custom projects,
Mhm.
always sort of have a running list of my queue so I can pair things like, okay, I'm going to be doing this, whatever, cable over here. You know what? I think I could also do that smaller project next to it when you run those two things alongside one another. Or if I'm already doing this particular project, I'm going to have these materials out already. Let me also tack on that project. Um, so things like that, I think, help ensure that I'm the most like
Mhm.
and all of those discovery calls are scheduled. So that's something that I don't kind of muck around with. I don't have this, "Oh, well, just call me whenever." Oh, I'm not available, or I'm available now or this time or that time, and that's kind of how we have to do things. So
Mhm.
I have all of that very structured. I think it just comes from being very structured and very organized, and I'm very diligent. Like I really don't need anyone sort of in behind me, sort of like coaching me along, like, "Don't forget to this." Like, I am my
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah. And what advice would you give someone like to other small business owners or someone in new in the industry in home decor and furniture retail space?
Um, I think that if you're not interested in the work, it's gonna be a slog. I think find the pocket that most interests you. So for me, it's that creative problem solving. So looking at something and knowing, how this wood is going to interact with stain, and knowing the background of, oh, if I were to refinish this and then they want me to do this, oh, that's not gonna, I like all of that. I like that sort of heady stuff. Um,
Mhm.
reading, I read a lot of books on wood species. Like I'm into that, right? Like that appeals to me.
Yeah.
I think that if you really don't have that, I'm not saying you have to have that specific lane of, I like that level of technicality. But I really am into, learning about different materials and what molecules are in this kind of polyurethane. Like that delights me. And that could just be the art background because that's kind of, where I really explored all of that. But I think that any time that I can use that, it excites me and it sort of it rejuvenates that enthusiasm that you have for what you're doing, because this isn't a job that's like, wow, you're gonna make a bazillion dollars doing it. Like get it here because it is, we're looking at some real finance salary over here. Like you're not. You have to like it on some level, or it's just going to be a slog. And I think that find the aspect of it that you like the most, whether it's like, oh, I like repairing things, or I really love this particular, style of furniture, or these antiques, or I really like modern, like whatever your brand of fun is. I think I think curate a business around that, because that shows through the most. If what some again, some kind of like quote something else kind of, but I forget where I read or heard this, but if you think about your job in the sense of, what you like, what job should I do? What is the best job for me? One way of thinking about that is just like, what am I good at? What should I do? What can make me the most money, etc. If you reframe it just slightly to, what gift do I have that I can share with the world? Like, what do I have inside me that maybe no one else has, or maybe someone else has, but, not my way. What can I share? Right. And that, I think, when you frame it from that point of view, it makes the job so much easier of like, oh, I'm really good at this. I should share this. Like that's so that's some that you can't get somewhere else. And so by that alone, you've already cornered a market, because it's just you. It's just you doing what you're particularly good at, the skill that you have, that gift that you bring.
Yeah.
And so I think that self-actualization and realization really important when you are beginning a business. What is it that I'm trying to share with the world? What is it that I'm trying to do here? Um, and then just kind of keeping that as the goal. And that's,
Mhm. That's how you stay inspired and motivated, right? As an entrepreneur.
yeah, you
Yeah.
have to. Otherwise, again, it can sort of feel like a flighty idea in the beginning, and like it's exciting because it's exciting. And then, but the glitter fades a little bit. It starts to fall to the ground at some point, and it's not all just a sparkly air anymore. Now it's just kind of what it is. And so I think if you kind of approach it from that perspective, it keeps it aglow. And for me, it's definitely something that like I mean, don't tell anyone who's wanting to pay me, but I would be doing this anyway. You know what I mean? Like this is like if you just dropped this chest that I've been working on over here off at my doorstep, I would have refinished it, whether you asked me to, whether you paid me or not. Like I just I find this work to be, again, it's very connecting. It there's like an endearment to it. It helps me feel like I'm bringing back something that's really special to somebody. Memories come back for people. Um, and so I really like that. And I think there's something that just like tugs at me. Again,
Yeah.
I'm happy people are paying me, but like,
Yep. And what are your future plans or goals for the Pink Pinecone?
hmm. So I'm actually in a bit of a you caught me at an interesting time. I'm about to go back and do a bit of a career change, but not leaving this. So my future with this is going to be to kind of keep it status quo. So again, I'm not trying to grow the business any larger or broaden too much. That doesn't mean that I don't want to have this business. I do. This is staying. So I want to continue to do what I'm doing, but I also want to fold in more because again, as my child's getting older now, my capacity is getting larger, and so uh, I'm going to go into therapy as another job that I just can add on to this, and then I can do this as well. So for me, it's going to look like kind of continuing on and continuing to be predominantly that customization and bringing these pieces that people find cherished, bringing those back to life is really what I'm going to continue doing. I want to really take that corner share and just stick with that. Um, and I think just continuing what I'm doing, I don't know if much is going to really change. I think I'm right in the pocket of where I wanna be, um, and I've gone through that doesn't mean that I haven't, like, gone through all of the thoughts of, like, "Oh my gosh, I know that I could enhance my business if I were to hire XYZ people, and if I were to get this warehouse, and if I were to broaden this and that and the other thing." Like, I can do all of the business modeling, but again, to what gain? And right now that doesn't fit into where my family is, and where my life is right now. And so that might come down the road, but for right now, I kind of like being a party of one and having the capacity to do the work that I find interesting. So I can just as well say, that doesn't really appeal to me. And I think you'd be really better served, taking this project to somebody else. And I love that. I like that I have that sort of thought. Um, so for me, it's going to be a matter of folding this into another career as well, because you can't find enough time in the day.
Mhm, mhm. And like, can you share a memorable customer story or moment that highlights what your business is all about? Like, I can see that you love what you do, and definitely you should have some stories.
Oh gosh, one that comes to mind, just because it was probably the most recent, perhaps. But this woman called. She had a old Singer. Those Singer sewing machines. They have like the wrought iron and then the wood and the whole.
Mhm.
And it was a very special piece for her. She had a very close relationship with, I believe it was her aunt who owned it, and you could just feel it was special. Like, you could feel the way that she talked about it, and and the sound in her voice of just kind of like, "Oh my gosh, can you anything this?" And I did, and I remember working on it and really just kind of pouring all of me into this project because it just I you could feel how important it was to her. And then when she came to pick it up, she cried, and it just tugged at everything. It just made it feel like this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, this exact moment of having her come in and see this thing that is so special that can now live in her house and be this beautiful, piece of art almost. And it reminds her of this wonderful relationship that she had. And again, I think that yes, things are things, right? They're not people. But I think that there's a window into these things that invite you into this memory. And I think that restoring that memory for her, um, yeah, I felt like honored to be part of it. It just made me, I don't know, that feels like the crux of it all. Like those moments. Yeah.
Yep. Uh, and like, how do you educate your customers about the unique value or story behind your products? Like, I can see you have products online on your website, and like, do you do storytelling as well? Or
Um, I mean, I think every time I open my mouth, I start storytelling. I don't really have a short way of
okay.
this elevator pitch version of things is not what's happening. No, I think that I make sure that so on my website, if you go to my shop, this started when in the beginning too. It's funny, I haven't actually thought about this in so long, the origin story of this, but yeah, I started to name my furniture. Like like they all had little identities.
Mhm.
So anyway, so what happened was the stuff that I was reselling, as I would be working on it, it just started to emerge with its own little personality, and so I was like, "Oh my gosh, this dresser's name is Bob." Like, it just and so when I finished Bob, I would post it online and be like, "Bob has beautiful curves," or whatever, and so on and so forth, and so I always make it a point to describe them like the little individuals that they are because, like, they are, and yeah, so the little descriptions and the storytelling, it just sort of happens, both in my descriptions as I'm talking to into my stories and sort of describing the pieces that I'm working on, like, oh, I'm, doing whatsoever. And then I also, when I do post it online, I always put the little narrative underneath about, well, Bob has charm and he's a sturdy boy and whatever, right? So it's always described as though it's a person because to me they kind of are. Like, gosh, I sound psychotic. Um, but yeah, so I think that that's sort of a description aspect of it. So.
Okay, yeah. And for our listeners, like, can you share your contact information if they want to reach out to you?
Sure. So if you go to thepinkpinecone.com, that's where you can see everything. And then on social media, again, same thing. It's Pink Pinecone on Instagram and on Facebook. And I haven't broached the TikTok thing yet, so you won't find me there. But stay tuned, maybe to say. Um, but yeah, if you want to just shoot me an email, I think that always is the best way to do things because then you can send pictures of what you're to restore or uh that's contact pinkpinecone@gmail.com. And that's the best way to reach me. And then we'll set up a phone call and then we can talk because Lord knows I can talk.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Diana, for being part of this amazing journey for us. Like, this is definitely one of the best episodes.
Okay. You say that to everybody.
And no, this is the first time that I'm telling that. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. This is
I really enjoyed your, story, and hopefully our listeners will like it as well.
yeah, me
Um,
too.
yep. Thank you so much for
Yeah, I hope to hear from somebody, and that would be great, right? Well, I should be. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you, Diana.
All right, bye-bye.